This is Bear Arms, your average Spiffos line cook. Now, Spiffos was known for their good food and lax safety standards. But when a horrific grease fire broke out, he knew just what to do. Bear ran to the sink and grabbed a bucket of water. He was rushed to the hospital in Louisville. Here he was placed into the ICU for recovery. After a couple months, Bear could walk again. After waking up from anesthesia after an outpatient procedure, he realized that things weren't quite the way he remembered them when he went to sleep. See, the doctors, the nurses, even his own family had all left suddenly. It was as if he'd been abandoned there. In fact, the whole office was abandoned. So he decided to grab a quick snack and head outside to see why everybody was missing. And when he opened the door, he was shocked to find zombies. Just like Call of Duty, he thought to himself. He was almost giddy as he engaged the first one in hand-to-hand combat. Seeing another zombie this quickly, it had to be true. The zombie apocalypse was upon him, and he was still in recovery from his burns. But that didn't stop Bear. Seeing as a long hike back to Riverside was out of the question, Bear decided that this townhouse would have to do for now. After all, it was so close to the grocery store. He thought this bedroom would suit him just fine, and it even had a balcony. But before he could call this house a home, he had to fight off the previous tenants. And boy, they were coming out of the woodwork for him. But with a little finesse and just a little bit of luck, he was able to quickly deal with the previous tenants. And he took care of the neighbors too. So he helped himself to one of their jackets and decided that now was a good time to check out the neighbor's house. After all, they'd kind of broken the door down for him. But just because there wasn't a door didn't necessarily mean he was a welcomed house guest. 3 new neighbors gladly greeted him to the new home. It turns out all those bar fights and gas station brawls really started to pay off when the zombie apocalypse started. In the bathroom, he finally found some very valuable medication. Once the house next door was clear, this balcony became a pathway between the 2 homes, and another valuable escape route, just in case. So he grabbed the TV, dragged it all the way up to his new bedroom, and started to settle in for real. After getting settled in, it was time for a late lunch, but nothing ever really came easy around here. Bear wanted peaches, not neighbors, but it turns out he was going to have both, and there was even a neighbor on the door as well. Not wanting to be a rude host, he allowed his neighbor to come inside and give him a special welcome. He had a pork chop almost cooked when, once again, the neighbors came a-calling. Not a problem for Bear, of course. And at long last, Bear got to eat his delicious pork chop, fresh from the oven. At 6 o'clock, it was time for Bear to catch his favorite show. Somehow, the television was still broadcasting. And even though Bear had never been much of a reader before, ever since the accident, it's a hobby he had learned to love. And so for 6 hours, Mr. Arms read and read, waiting until just the right moment to take some pain meds and scurry off to sleep for the bright new day he would face tomorrow. And what a day it turned out to be. Bear decided it was time to get some groceries, and he would go through the window. After all, these doors don't actually work. After carefully removing the glass, he helped himself inside and assisted a fellow shopper with a thing. Finally, Bear could get down to business and start eating. 1, 2, 3 whole heads of lettuce. Like a hungry caterpillar, he ate. Next, a pear, a peach, and a mango. And at long last, Bear was finally full, and he could get on to shopping for groceries for later. Needless to say, Bear decided to shop on the other side of the store for a little while. And it wasn't so bad. After all the candy was over here. After dealing with some of the very rude workers, He got his goods and decided it was time to mosey on home. After arriving, he realized that he needed to bring his fridge upstairs for easy access in the middle of the night. Fridge in place, it was time to put the food up. That should last a few days. It should last a few days, but what about a few more days? After all, his neighbors weren't going to be using their groceries anymore, so he helped himself to some chips and a couple chocolate bars. And a few other things as well. But after a brief skirmish in the streets, it was time for Bear to hang up his hat and call it a day. He had two last goals for the day. First, he needed to bring another refrigerator to his bedroom. And second, well, before he could finish his thought, there was a knock at the door. A neighbor let himself in. Oh, well, he would be quickly dispatched. But alas, another approached him as well. He was exhausted, exerted, in an immense amount of pain. But he knew that he had to keep fighting, and hopefully no more neighbors would visit him tonight. Thankfully, they didn't, and Bear enjoyed a nice episode of exposure survival with Dean. And after dinner and a book, Bear drifted off to sleep. Bear woke up, ate several kilograms of food, and carried on with his morning routine. And he finally remembered that second thing he had to take care of. He was going to need ripped sheets in order to take care of this, and so he went about getting as many as he could get his hands on. He was also going to need a cooking pot, and there wasn't one in the house that he inherited. So, once again, he figured he'd ask the neighbor if he could just, borrow one. He figured he'd grab the rolling pin too, but it seemed the previous tenant didn't quite appreciate that one. He scurried home and filled up the cooking pot with water and immediately put it in the oven on full heat. And he disinfected his new bandages, just to make sure he was extra safe. And so he began the long and painstaking process of changing each and every bandage on his body. But wait, it seemed as if some of the wounds had healed. It was as if he was finally starting to get better in this horrid nightmare that he had woken up to. Well, he did kind of enjoy this new world. Even though it was very hostile and incredibly dangerous at pretty much all times, it did beat working at Spiffos every day. And you really could let off some steam if you wanted to. And right now, Bear realized that the next thing on his list was to get a vehicle. No matter what kind, no matter what color, it was going to be the right kind for him if it ran and it had a little bit of gas inside. Unfortunately, neither this car nor this car had gas and ran at the same time. However, this car he could get into, but there just wasn't a key. Or was there? Bear was going to have this key, and no zombie was going to stand in his way, even if it was 2 zombies. He popped the key into the car and found that there was about a thimble full of gas, but that would be enough to get him to the gas station at least. He decided to return home for the night, and tomorrow, when he was rested and well fed, he would venture to the gas station and get this baby filled up. And so he ate and ate after arriving home, filling himself with precious nutrients. He prepared himself for a long rest and hopefully a successful venture out in the morning. After waking up, he changed his bandages, and he looked pretty good at the end of it. As dawn was breaking, Bear hopped in his car and headed to the gas station. Daylight was burning, even though daylight wasn't quite upon us yet. Boy, sure seems to be a lot of pedestrians out at 5 a.m. today. But in spite of all the jaywalkers, Bear arrived. Now he just had to fight his way to a gas pump. And he had an idea of how to do it. After some tough hand-to-hand combat, he stepped out of his vehicle and looked around just to make sure he was finally safe. Could he finally, truly pump some gas? Yes. With some snacks and some smokes as well. And before long, he was heading on home. But when he pulled up, boy was he in for a fight. It was as if this old muffler had attracted half the neighborhood when he came back. Thankfully, Bear had been in a bar brawl or two, and he knew just how to handle the situation. After a few more stragglers, Bear was finally safe, finally home again, and it seemed like, for the moment, no more nosy neighbors. But Bear knew he couldn't stay here forever, not in Louisville. He had to make it back home eventually. So, he did the only thing that he knew to do, pack up everything he owned, and prepared to hit the road. He even filled his seats with all the food he had acquired. He returned inside for one last night, knowing what tomorrow would bring, his first attempt at leaving Louisville. But for now, all he had to comfort him was a book all about tailoring. Well, tailoring and a little woodcraft. And so he read into the twilight hours, preparing himself for tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of Burnward Patient in Louisville. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. If it's a series you'd like to see me do, or a challenge you'd like to see me complete, let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much. Be well.